I've spent the last 15 years at Trilock Woodworks. It feels strange to say it like that, as if I'm announcing the end of something, but that's what it is, an era. My business card says Senior Vice President of Sales, but what that really means is that I kept the lights on. I didn't just manage accounts, I built relationships. These weren't just clients. I knew their kids' names, their vacation spots, their golf handicaps. I was the first call when things went wrong, and they trusted me to fix problems before they even knew they existed. But today something feels off. Vanessa, the new director, sits across the table from me, her fingers tapping impatiently against the glass. She's been here for 3 months, but already she's rearranged everything. I can't put my finger on it yet, but I know something's about to change in a way I won't like. This isn't the same company anymore. The numbers, the strategy, she's all about that. And me? I can feel it. I'm becoming irrelevant. Vanessa's voice cuts through the air, crisp and unbothered, as she starts outlining the changes. Your package is outdated, she says, sliding a document toward me. We're cutting base pay by 40% and restructuring commissions. This new structure will incentivize growth. I glance at the paper. Numbers, figures, percentages, but they don't matter. What hits me hardest is the tone, the absolute detachment with which she delivers this news. No mention of the years I've dedicated to this company, the relationships I've built, the sweat and hours I've put into getting us here. To her, it's all just a spreadsheet. The sting is sharp, a feeling of betrayal that settles heavy in my chest. This isn't just about money. It's personal. She's changing everything, and in doing so, she's erasing me. I've always known that business can be ruthless, but I didn't think it would be this cold. Not to me. I've given everything to this place, and in return, I'm being handed a piece of paper telling me I'm obsolete. I could feel the anger building up in me, the urge to argue, to fight for my worth. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there, my hands steady on the edge of the table, gripping the folder in front of me like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. Is there a timeline for this transition? I asked, my voice even controlled. Vanessa smiled, that tight, practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. We need everyone on board with the new direction, she said, completely unbothered by the impact of her words. I could have said so much. I could have pointed out the years of loyalty, the relationships that built this company, the personal sacrifices. But what would be the point? She'd already made up her mind. She'd already decided that I was a relic, something to be discarded in the name of progress. So I stood up, extended my hand, and said, "Thank you for the clarity." The words felt hollow. I wasn't thanking her. I was resigning myself to the truth. I wasn't needed anymore. I was the old guard, the past, and she was the future. As I walked out of that conference room, I didn't slam the door, didn't throw a fit. I just grabbed a few personal items from my desk. Nothing dramatic, just a photo of my daughters at their graduations, a pen set from a longtime client, an old sales award. I moved through the office like it was just another day. But inside, everything was shifting. I'd spent 15 years building this department. 15 years making connections, solving problems, and going above and beyond for my clients. I didn't just sell products. I sold trust. And those relationships, they weren't just business deals. I knew these people, their lives, their families. But none of that mattered to Vanessa. To her, it was all just numbers. She didn't care about the years of loyalty or the connections I'd worked so hard to forge. She was playing her own game, focused on margins and spreadsheets, unaware, or maybe indifferent, to the cost of tearing apart what had been built over so many years. I could feel it now, that weight of being discarded. I'd been the one who kept the wheels turning, but to her, I was just a relic, old, expensive, expendable. And as much as I tried to deny it, I knew deep down this wasn't just about the pay cuts. It was about her intention to wipe the slate clean, to take Trilock in a new direction, and I wasn't part of that vision. As I packed up my office, the weight of everything hit me. The years of hard work, the late nights, the weekends spent troubleshooting problems for clients, none of it seemed to matter anymore. I wasn't angry, not really. I was just numb. The reality of it all started to settle in. I was leaving. There was no fight left in me. I had no choice but to go. But as I boxed up my things, I caught glimpses of the faces around me. Thomas, our CFO, avoided my gaze, but his eyes said everything. There was no need for words. I knew what he was thinking. He'd been with me from the start, and even if he couldn't say it, he knew what was happening. It wasn't just the people I worked with that made the place feel like home. It was the clients, the ones who called me at all hours, the ones who trusted me to solve their problems, the ones who stuck with us through thick and thin. I wasn't just walking away from a job. I was walking away from relationships that took years to build. And that's what stung the most. Vanessa didn't just cut my salary. She cut me out of the equation entirely, dismissing everything I'd done for the sake of her cold, data-driven vision. She saw me as old-fashioned, but what she didn't realize was that the foundation I built was the reason this company had grown. The loyalty I fostered wasn't something you could quantify on a spreadsheet. That's when I realized this wasn't just a job change. This was betrayal. And it hurt in a way I hadn't expected. The quiet, unspoken acknowledgement of my worth, or rather, the lack of it, was louder than any argument or confrontation could have been. As I left the office, still processing everything, my phone buzzed in my pocket. At first, I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to pick up. "Jeffrey, it's Frank Donnelly from Weston Commercial. Heard some things about Trilock. Everything all right?" His voice was tight and I could tell he was worried. I leaned against the car, trying to sound calm. "Yeah, it's been a bit of a shake-up, but I'm sure we'll figure it out." Frank wasn't buying it. "Look, I've been hearing things about new management, changes in pricing, and new systems. We've been working together for years. You're the guy who's always had our back. What's going on?" I felt a lump form in my throat, a mix of pride and sadness. Frank wasn't just concerned about the business. He was concerned about me. About the trust we'd built. "I'm not sure yet, Frank, but I'll make sure everything is handled. Don't worry." The call ended, but soon after my phone rang again. And again. Every client, from Harold at Northwell to Rick at Austin Modern, all asking the same thing. What was happening? They weren't just asking about prices or terms, they were asking about me. It was a subtle, quiet realization, but it hit me hard. They didn't trust Trilock because of their fancy new systems or the slick presentations. They trusted me. In that moment, I understood. I wasn't just a title, a senior VP of sales. I was the reason these clients stayed loyal for years. I was the one they turned to when things got tough, the one who knew them, who cared about their business. I'd always known my value, but now, with everything unraveling, it was clear that Trilock had missed it entirely. This wasn't just about the loss of a paycheck or a job. It was about relationships, about being the one who actually understood the people behind the contracts. And as my phone continued to buzz with calls, I realized I wasn't just losing a job. I was gaining something more important, an undeniable reminder of my true worth. I sat at my desk at home, staring at the blank screen of my laptop. The weight of the last few hours settled in, the phone calls from clients still echoing in my mind. It was becoming clear. I wasn't going to let Vanessa and her cold corporate strategy define me. I wasn't going to sit back and watch everything I'd worked for slip away. I opened a new email draft and typed in Daniel Harrison's name, Pinnacle Supply Group. We'd met at an industry conference last year, and he had seemed like a sharp guy, someone who understood what made the business tick. I didn't need to be loyal to a company that saw me as expendable. I needed to protect what I'd built. "Daniel," I typed, taking a deep breath. "I hope all is well. I've been following your company's growth, and I believe there might be an opportunity for us to collaborate. If you're open to it, I'd love to discuss a potential role at Pinnacle that would allow me to leverage my experience and client relationships. Let me know when you have time for a call." I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the send button. A week ago, I wouldn't have dreamed of taking this step. But everything had changed now. Vanessa had pushed me out, but instead of feeling lost, I felt empowered. The clients I had worked with for years were reaching out to me, not because of some loyalty to Trilock, but because they trusted me. The change was more than just a new job. It was about taking control of my future, about finding a place where my skills and relationships were valued. I pressed send. As the email left my inbox, I felt a shift in myself. This wasn't just about moving on, it was about moving forward, taking the reins of my own destiny. No more waiting for permission. No more being overlooked. I was in charge now. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, emails, and quiet reflection. I hadn't expected things to move this quickly, but as I went about my usual routine, the reality of what was happening began to sink in. It started with Harold from Northwell Construction. The phone rang one morning and I recognized his name immediately. "Jeffrey," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "I've got some questions about these new price increases Trilock is implementing. We've been with you for years, but this doesn't sit right with us. Can Pinnacle match our old terms?" I smiled to myself, leaning back in my chair. "Harold, I can guarantee we'll match it, and more. We'll add value to the service you've always received, and I'll make sure we're always on the same page." The relief in his voice was palpable. We talked for another 10 minutes, and by the end of the conversation, I knew. He wasn't just reaching out because of the pricing, he trusted me. Over the next few days I got more calls. Rick from Austin Modern. Frank from Weston. Several others, all asking the same questions. All mentioning me by name. I hadn't made a single move, hadn't even called them. They were coming to me. Each conversation was the same. A mix of confusion and frustration over Vanessa's changes, followed by a clear desire to continue working with me. I realized something then. Vanessa had underestimated my influence. She thought the clients were loyal to Trilock, to the systems and the structure. But they weren't. They were loyal to me. I had built these relationships brick by brick, and the moment I walked away they noticed. They weren't waiting around for Trilock to get their act together. They were already looking for me. The tension in the air grew thicker. With each call, with each email, I saw more clearly how badly Vanessa had miscalculated. She had thought she could push me aside, implement her numbers-first approach, and everything would fall into place. But as the clients came to me, it became clear. She had made a fatal mistake. And as much as I tried to avoid it, I couldn't help but feel the growing sense of satisfaction. They hadn't forgotten me. Not by a long shot. Vanessa's strategy was unraveling, and I was at the center of it. I'd known this meeting was coming. Vanessa had reached out, trying to salvage something, anything from the mess she'd made. But I wasn't interested in apologies or explanations. I'd moved past that. When I walked into the coffee shop, I saw her sitting at a table by the window, her designer suit as immaculate as always. She wasn't the same confident, poised figure I'd seen months ago. There was a noticeable tension in her posture, a subtle desperation that was harder to hide than her usual polished demeanor. She was struggling to maintain control. "Jeffrey," she said, standing as I approached. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." Her voice was tight, forced, as if the words themselves were a struggle. I nodded, sliding into the chair across from her. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't need to. The silence hung between us like a thick fog, only punctuated by the low hum of conversation from nearby tables. "I know things have been difficult," she continued, finally speaking again. "But we need to talk about what happens next. We need to figure out a way to resolve this situation." I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch a little longer. She was already trying to assert control, but I wasn't the one who needed to be convinced. "Resolve what exactly?" I asked, my tone calm even. Her eyes flickered. "You know what I mean. You've been in contact with some of our top clients. You've been taking business away from us." Her voice rose slightly, her words sharp. She wasn't hiding her frustration anymore. "This can't continue, Jeffrey. We can make this easy for you or we can make it hard. All you have to do is back off." I met her gaze, unflinching. "I'm not taking anything from you, Vanessa. Your clients are choosing who they want to work with. It's not personal. It's business. And it's exactly what you're doing. Business." Her jaw clenched, but she didn't respond immediately. The desperation was clear now, her control slipping as she tried to find a way to turn this around. I could almost see the wheels turning in her head, but the truth was too far gone. She couldn't undo what she had done. "I just want what's best for the company," she said, her voice softening, but it was too little, too late. "I get that," I replied, my calm never wavering. "But what you don't understand is that it's not just about the company. It's about the people who make it work. You can't measure loyalty, Vanessa. You can't quantify trust. You can't replace that with spreadsheets and strategies." She looked at me, eyes searching, but there was nothing left to say. The contrast between our emotional states was stark. She was grasping at whatever control she had left, while I sat there, grounded and confident, knowing I had made the right choices. She had underestimated me, but now the tables had turned. She didn't have the power anymore. "I'll be moving on, Vanessa," I said, standing up and gathering my things. "You'll figure things out. You always do." Her smile was tight, strained. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Jeffrey." I didn't reply. I simply nodded and left. As I walked out of the coffee shop, a strange sense of peace washed over me. It wasn't satisfaction exactly, but something close. I was done. And somehow that felt like winning. As I left the coffee shop and got into my car, a strange calm settled over me. The weight of the last few weeks, the uncertainty, the anger, the frustration, was finally lifting. I had spent so much time worrying about the way things were ending at Trilock, but now I realized something. It wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something new. I drove to my daughter's house later that evening, the steady hum of the engine matching the steady rhythm of my thoughts. I hadn't realized how much I'd been carrying until now, but everything felt different. The world felt wide open in a way it hadn't for a long time. When I sat down with my daughter, the conversation was easy. "How's work, Dad?" she asked, smiling as she poured me a drink. "Good," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Building something that'll last." I meant it. Not just the new job at Pinnacle, though that was a big part of it, but what I'd really built over the years, the relationships, the trust. I could take that with me. It wasn't just tied to a company or a title. It was mine. I had given Trilock everything I had, and in return, I'd been discarded like an outdated machine. But what Vanessa didn't realize was that what I had built couldn't be measured by her metrics. The loyalty I had earned, the trust one had established, it was real. It was lasting. Pinnacle was a fresh start, a new challenge, but it wasn't the only thing that had changed. I had changed. I wasn't the same person I had been when I first walked into Trilock. I had learned to recognize my worth, to trust in the relationships I had built, and to stop waiting for someone else to validate it. As I sat with my daughter, the clarity of it all settled in. The past was behind me, but it had brought me to where I needed to be. My career wasn't defined by a company or a paycheck. It was defined by the people I had helped, the trust one had built, and the integrity I had maintained. And no matter what Vanessa thought, that would always be enough. The next morning, I walked into Pinnacle's offices, ready for the next chapter. I knew that whatever came next, I was in control. The sense of suspense I'd been feeling for so long was finally replaced with certainty. I wasn't just moving on, I was moving forward, stronger and clearer than ever before.